Can you feel the tension between your long-term ambitions and where you're at right now? Does it feel like your big goals are actually stealing away the joy from today? Or that chaotic daily routine and grind is just destroying this hope that you have for your long-term legacy? Well, if so, my friend, first of all, you're not alone. And second of all, you're in the right place, because the Lead Your Life podcast is here for you just for those reasons. Are you leading your life? Or are you just accepting it by reacting to all the things that come your way? See, every day, a silent enemy quietly steals away the purpose and the energy from values-driven people. Here, we call it the drift. It leaves you feeling exhausted and unfulfilled. The solution isn't more efficiency or a new time management hack. No, it requires self-leadership. Because the truth is, the hardest person you will have to lead is the one in the mirror. Well, welcome to Lead Your Life. I'm your host, Nick Mazey. Here, we focus on the 1% shifts that you can make to lock in your daily choices into deep alignment with your core values and true purpose. Stop drifting, my friend. Live your values and start leading your life. Let's dive in. Hello, my friend, and welcome. Look, today we're going to be talking about this paradox between the future and the present, and how we can really make sense of this by prioritizing our priorities. And we'll be focusing on the focus shift that we're going to be talking about in this podcast episode. There's many high achievers out there. Maybe this is you, where you feel like living in the present moment and building this future vision that you have for your life, your family, those really important goals that you have. Maybe sometimes you feel that living in the present moment and building out that future and that vision are mutually exclusive. Like if you do one, like if you're living in the present moment, then you're not being intentional for the future. Or if you're building out for the future, then you're not being intentional with being present and where you're at right now. And it seems like there's just this conflict where you can only do one or the other. They're mutually exclusive. Well, if that's you, and not just these other high achievers and values-minded professionals out there, then you're in the right place. At the same time, I want you to think about this just for one moment. Just be open to the idea that those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. All right? So in this title, it's talking about, prioritizing your priorities. Well, what does that actually mean? How can you prioritize your priorities when everything feels urgent and everything coming your way it's all a priority? Well, as I say, everything can't be a priority and you can't focus on everything at the same time. But you know what? That sounds a lot better when it's not in real life and you're just trying to do it and you're trying to make it through the day, because you do have a lot of things that are really important. And yes, look, I know it does seem like the answer would just be more time. Like these other people that are achieving these things, it seems like they're just living such a good life. It seems like they're present in the moment. They're building out their goals. And they have this margin, this space, and less stress. They must just have more time, or a magic wand, or they're just having AI do all of it for them. Well, I'm going to venture out to say that maybe we don't need more time. Maybe we just need the courage, to get really clear on what actually matters most. And maybe we need to just be able to stomach the discomfort that it takes to actually defend what matters most. Maybe we need to be okay with how uncomfortable it is to truly prioritize our priorities. See, if you're really prioritizing your values, and what truly is most important, like if you're doing that, I mean, you're gonna have to say no to things that are what other people expect, what other people think you should do, with all the social pressures and demands for your time and attention and the commitments people want you to make. And really, I'll say, all the good things out there, you're going to have to say no to a lot of them. And that's going to be really uncomfortable. But that's the only space that's going to be able to allow you to say yes to the best things. Saying yes to those true priorities that's most important to you means you're going to say no to the other things that are actually really good, but they're just not the most important to you and your values. And when you say no to those things, it's uncomfortable. And so maybe we just got to get okay with being really uncomfortable. Because when you're uncomfortable, that's tough. You're uncomfortable saying no to the good things, but that means at the end of the day, you can look yourself in the mirror and you can be proud of what you did because you said yes to the most important things. I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent. I got my notes in front of me, and this is not where I was planning to go. We got the rest of the podcast episode to dive into some things. But I just wanted to just focus on that for just one moment, because it is very uncomfortable to say, to turn things down that are good. It's really uncomfortable, even when you know that you're really honoring your values and your priorities. So I want you to just think about that for a moment. Think about being okay with being uncomfortable. Well, at the end of the day, you're being intentional with honoring your values on what's really most important to you in your life, your family, your values. That's where we need to get. Not just wanting more time, but being okay with defending the time that we have. All right, so this balance, this conflict between the future, the goals, the vision, and where we're at right now. Well, I had to get right into that myself. It was just a few weeks ago, and a little bit of a personal story. I had a great opportunity to take my wife out on a date, and it's one of those things that's like I always know we got to do it, but hey, there's a lot of demands too, and so I'm working myself on making sure that I'm intentional with the things that are most important. So if you're married, I highly encourage you, keep dating your spouse. It's awesome. But one of the things that we talked about, and because really all it came down to, well, let me step back. I'm taking her out on a date. There's a restaurant that she really wants to go to. Now, this restaurant you can't get reservations for. Like, they actually just don't accept reservations. You can't even call ahead. You just got to show up, put yourself on a list, and it's going to be a long wait. So we go there, put our name on the list, and then we pop over down the street just a little bit to this nice place that we like. We're just going to hang out there and wait for our table to be available. And it was great. We're just sitting outside. It's a nice weather, nice temperature. Just sitting out at a little table on the sidewalk in front of this little speakeasy that we like. And just we had the space to have this conversation. It wasn't forced, and it didn't come there with a game plan to work through these things. But we had a little bit of space, and so we were really talking about this long-term goals that we have and this vision that we have and things that are really important to us in the long term that are really big for us. And then balancing that out with where we're at right now, because it can seem like that things are so off in the future and we're not living in the present. Or vice versa, if we just really lean in and be present where we're at, are we going to be sacrificing this in the future? And I wish I had this magical solution that we dial it in, the perfect formula, and it's just going to work for everybody. No. But what we did is we identified, hey, there's a little bit of this conflict, a little bit of this battling, if you will, of the future vision and big goals, and being present in the moment. So we're not just burning through our days and wishing our days away. And let me go ahead and tell you, the only reason this conversation happened or was able to happen is because we created the space, the margin, to be able to have that conversation and to sit in that discomfort a little bit, identify it, recognize it, talk through it, and just to get to a better place. No, this whole episode's not about me or conversations with my wife or our own personal goals. Not at all. But what I want to leave you with in just this little point is that because we created a little bit of space, and it was challenging, with the babysitter and all this stuff, and it wasn't the best timing, and this was going on, but we knew that it was something that was important because it is a part of our values. Our marriage and our family is definitely in our values. So we had to create some space and just honor those values. And what came of it was just such a better understanding, appreciation. We have a little bit more of a game plan now, but it didn't start with, hey, I got to do these things and check these boxes. It started with honoring the values that are most important, even when it's not convenient and you have to do a little bit of work. I said, I'm not going to share all the details of our conversation because that's not the point. But the point is that if you're feeling at all any of that conflict and that friction between your future and where you're at right now, then you need to create a little bit of space and sit in it. There's nothing wrong with friction. Friction is just an indicator. It just identifies things that are going on. There's nothing wrong with discomfort at all. It's just going to show you what's going on. It's just a little bit of an indicator. It's some information. Now, but you do have to be aware of it, and you have to be cautious. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in this trap. It's either the trap of avoiding the friction. It's either the trap of saying, hey, there's friction, there's discomfort, so it must be bad. No. And also some of the conversation that my wife and I had, some of it was, a little bit uncomfortable because we had to call some things out. That we're feeling, that we're noticing, some of the challenges. And that's not fun. But let me tell you what's rewarding. Working through that friction, sitting in that discomfort a little bit. When you get past that, and you can look at, hey, this was awesome. Like, we had an intentional conversation. We came up with some good things. We have a little bit of a game plan. We're on the same page. This is truly impactful. Now, even if you're not married and or have a significant other, you can still do this because you'll still need to sit in a little bit of the discomfort and the friction that you might be experiencing. So take the time to do that. I really want to encourage you in this, because not only can you get past that friction and that discomfort, once you kind of work through the working towards your long-term goals and your vision, while being able to still live in the present, and enjoy your time now. But you kind of work through that. That's the rewarding part. And this long-term vision that you have for your life, it truly can guide you to be able to make the most of where you're at right now. And it's that way you can prioritize your priorities. Now, it's not just about time management, but it's about aligning what you're doing today with your long-term goals, the non-negotiables that you have for your future and your values. When you align that, then you can be present today too, because you're not just putting off for tomorrow. You're seeing the value in what you're doing right here, right now. And that was one of the things that came from our conversation was, identifying our values and how they really can align with what we're doing now, as well as what we're working toward. And it was profound. I wish I could detail a framework that's exactly follow steps 1, 2, 3, and go through. No, but when you create that margin, as challenging as that might be, that's what allows you to kind of work through that for yourself. So we're talking about prioritizing our priorities. Now, first of all, if you haven't taken the time to really go through it and explore, what your core values are, I encourage you to do that, because you can't prioritize your priorities if you don't know what your true priorities are. Now, you also can't prioritize your priorities if you're allowing all these other things to dictate how you're going to live your life, whether that's social influences, corporate, the job, seeking validation from family, from neighbors and community. You have to take a moment, and this is can be really uncomfortable. We're going to talk about a lot of discomfort in this episode. But if you want to prioritize your priorities, then you've got to make the commitment to letting go of seeking that approval. You got to make that commitment of letting go of seeking that approval, wherever it's coming from. Wherever you're seeking approval, it's going to be different than me, the neighbor and Joe Schmo down the road and the other podcast listener that's listening to this right now. But when you can let go of that and you commit to saying yes to what's most important to you, I'm not talking about just going and ticking people off on purpose, but when you live out your values, when you live with integrity and purpose, for what's truly important in your life, it's not going to align with everybody. And I'm not saying you get comfortable with that. And I'm not saying you're going to try to upset people on purpose. But being able to, at the end of the day, to look yourself in the mirror and know that you did your absolute best to live out your core values. That's more important than what your neighbor down the road thinks that you should be doing for your career. Are you going to be living out your personal integrity or seeking that public applause? Now, look, that might sound a little bit harsh. It even stings a little bit for me to say it, because it's something that I like. I like recognition. When you do something, you work hard, you achieve some things, you have an impact. It's great to feel that approval of other people. But all that is really secondary. It's like I said, being able to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and know that you fulfilled your personal integrity for your values and what you're going to do for your life. So you got to let go of that approval. And that's kind of the first point. I wonder what prioritizing your priorities. And then the second one is accepting that discomfort. Not only going to let go of that approval, but you got to really accept that discomfort. See, comfort's a trap, my friend. Comfort is a trap, whether if it's like physical comfort, social comfort, psychological comfort, whatever it is, that comfort is a trap. And how it can trap you is going to be different, for each one of us. And it might be due to our upbringing or what other people say is important. But when you really prioritize your true values, like I said, it's going to get uncomfortable, and it's going to get really uncomfortable when you start setting those firm boundaries and you maintain them and you protect those values and you maintain those boundaries. That is going to get uncomfortable. So not only we're going to let go of seeking that approval, we're going to let go of requiring and seeking that comfort. It's funny, and I'll use this as an example sometimes, but it's like the badge of honor that some people wear of just being busy, and just their busyness is almost like a badge of honor. Well, that kind of checks both these boxes, because we can look at other people. Other people can look around and say, "Hey, I'm so busy, so I must be important. So I'm getting some approval, and then that approval is kind of comfortable for them." If this is you, then I'm talking to you too, and sometimes it's me as well. But if we're having that busyness as a badge of honor, then it's kind of comfortable getting that approval, even though we're so busy and it kind of looks uncomfortable. That's where it's that psychological safety. It kind of checks both those boxes. So what can we do? We talked a lot about what's going on, this challenge between the future and the present, prioritizing your priorities. So what can you really do with all this information? Well, always got to give you some of the tools. And then after this, we'll dive into the action steps I'm going to challenge you to really move forward on this. So there's a ton of them. You've probably even heard of some of them. Some of them you heard on this podcast episode or on this podcast before. But one of them is just the 80-20 rule. And this, look, it's not perfect, but it's a good tool to use. And 80-20, or you may have heard it called the Pareto principle. That's basically just identifying the 20% of the things that give the 80% of the results. So 20% of blank gives you 80% of the results. Whether it's that, 20% of your calls get you 80% of the sales. 20% of your exercise routines can give you 80% of the benefit. 20% of your relationships give you 80% of fulfillment. Whatever it is. So you can look at what you're doing and say, hey, looking at my values, what certain actions and activities can really help fulfill and honor my values to the greatest degree. It can be a simple way to use the 80-20 rule. Another one, so that'd be number one, 80-20 rule. And number two would be, just a ruthless calendar audit, and expose where things are creeping in to your demands for your time and attention, your energy. Where are those commitments that are infringing upon the boundaries that you should set for your values? Where is that calendar creeping in? Not just look at what you did, look at what you got planned coming up. Look at the last month, look at the next week. Is your calendar really honoring your values? What has crept in and taken over? Or, if you don't have anything on that calendar and you just kind of wing it, well, maybe it's about time to build some boundaries into that calendar so that hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z this week so I can really honor my values. I'm going to, block out this time, make sure the family's eating dinner together, or, doing bedtime, or calling a family member. Whatever it is, maybe it's, hey, you know what? I'm going to put on my calendar each night to go ahead and make my lunch for work the next day so that I can start to eat healthy. What do you need to put on your calendar, and what do you need to cut out of your calendar? It's that ruthless calendar audit to make sure that you're honoring your values. Pair that up with the 80-20 rule, and those actions you take are going to be able to have a real bang for their buck and pack a punch. And here's another part. We talked about these core values. I said at the beginning, if you haven't taken some time and really identify what your core values are, really highly encourage you to do that. We're going to talk about a lot in this podcast in general, because it all comes down to our values that we can live out, so we can stop the drift, live our values, lead our lives. But we have to know what's the most important to each one of us. And so I'm not going to try to push all my values on you. Obviously, you'll hear about them in episodes. But if you have different values, that's cool, my friend. We're all different. But when you're doing that too, when you're looking at what's most important to you, you kind of flesh out your values. You got your top 5. Kind of taking that to the next step would be to look at what a vision for your life could be, like the impact that you want to have, how you want to truly live out your life. Not necessarily today, this week, next month, or even this year, but that long-term vision. Because see, that can guide you to what you're doing now. Not about sacrificing today and just grinding it out and just being miserable. But when you have the vision for your life and you've taken the time and said, hey, what do I want my life to look like, the impact I want to have? We'll dive into this later, but some people use like the eulogy, like, what do I want people to say about me when my time is on this earth is gone? There's different ways that you can look at vision, and it can help you to clarify it. But when you have that vision, you've taken the time to do that, then it kind of puts, I guess this is where the rubber meets the road. You have that vision, and so then it can add meaning to what you're doing today, because you're living out your values toward that vision and making sure that these things align. Not this big vision you have for your life and it doesn't align with your goals, with your values. Or, you set these values for your life, but your calendar looks different. That's where we want to make sure that these things are aligning, so you're living out your life on a daily basis that honors your values with personal integrity, and that's going toward the vision that you have for your life, for your impact and purpose, and all those good things. All right, so we've talked about this. We talked about the challenge between the future and the present. We talked about prioritizing the priorities, getting uncomfortable, stopping to seek approval. So what can you do with all this stuff? Well, here's the direct challenge, my friend. It's stop waiting for that approval and start leading your life. Start leading your life today. This might be time to sit down with your spouse or trusted accountability partner this week and define your top 3 priorities. Define your top 3 priorities. Go ahead and audit that calendar. Okay? And if you haven't, I want you to think about creating a vision for your life. If you haven't, just think about that one. Do it all, because you know what? If I give you 34 different action steps out of an episode, you're not going to do all of them. That's why we do the 1% shifts, right? The small adjustments that we can make and we can maintain. That way we can't make excuses and we can just go forward. So that's the challenge for you is, you know what? You don't need any approval. Just go out there and start leading your life. For this week, what you can do, you make sure you sit down and really work through what your top priorities are. All right? Make sure they align with your values, and then audit that calendar. And if you haven't yet, start thinking about that vision for your life, my friend. All right? You can do that. And as a reminder, you know that these podcast episodes are coming out at every other week basis now. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. It's going to be coming out in 2 weeks after this one. But I am creating some more stuff on the on my Substack that you can find at Substack there. So look up Nick Mazey if you're on Substack. But then also what you've heard me mention before is the Life Leaders Community. Life Leaders Community. It's on the school platform. It's a phenomenal platform. Makes it easy to interact. And on there, we're going to be diving into the action steps for podcast episodes, the takeaways, a little bit of encouragement, helping each other, posting and sharing some of our wins so that we can gain a little bit of momentum. Look, if you're worried about that, seeking that external approval or some of that discomfort, well, then pop on over to the Life Leaders Community because we're going to be encouraging and helping each other out to be able to live our values and lead our lives. We're going to put a stop to that drift, my friend. And if you jump into that Life Leaders Community, you'll be able to get some more of that and help along the way. So you can go to nickmazey.com/lifeleaders, and that's a link. It'll take you straight over to the platform, and you can check it out there. All right. All right, my friend, look, stop chasing that external approval. It's time to embrace the discomfort of truly prioritizing our priorities so we can stop that drift, my friend, live your values, and lead your life. All right, I'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care.